So we will now move on to excuse me, item number 6, which is an update in relation to counter-terrorism matters in West Yorkshire, but also, I'm sure, potentially touching on some of the wider national issues as well. Just before I do sort of come over to introduce again on this one, obviously in West Yorkshire we have the lead around certain aspects of this, and we do host what is termed the North East Counter-Terrorism Unit, and you know, obviously it is an important area of work that we've undertaken for some time in West Yorkshire, and certainly from a Police and Crime Commissioner perspective, again we've tried to focus some of our Safer Communities Fund, which is the proceeds of crime monies, into looking at people that are vulnerable to extremism from wherever that comes from. And since 2014 we've supported about 20 projects in West Yorkshire on that, but again it's an area that we constantly need to work with our partners on and communities at a very local level. But if you could give the update, please, thanks.
Yeah, so I'm Matthew Davis, the Detective Superintendent from Counter-Terrorism Policing for the North East. So the threat level currently remains severe, which means that an attack is highly likely. That's obviously a national assessment following the 5 attacks in 2017. And it's fair to say that this has created a rise in demand for counter-terrorism police services by probably about a third. So just to give you an idea, nationally we're probably looking at investigations that involve some 3,000 people. So you can sort of understand that the magnitude of the challenge that we've got. It is fair to say that the tragic circumstances of 2017, communities are pulling together, and we're getting more and more reports and referrals from concerned individuals, which can only be good news. Certainly during 2018, we got some 13,000 bits of information, reports from members of the public through the counter-terrorism hotline, and 76% of those transpired to relate to actual relevant counter-terrorist investigative stuff. So 76% of the 13,000 that we got. So we want to build on that, because I'm concerned that members of the public who probably wrestled with, you know, should we call the police with this bit of information, they're very busy. If 76% was relevant to us, then how many people maybe decided not to? And did we miss that information as a result of that? So certainly within West Yorkshire and across the North East, we want to continue to work with the ACT campaign and ensuring that we increase people's vigilance and that people are alive to the fact that the threat's very much still there. 18 plots have been foiled since that time. Some 4 of them were extreme right wing and 14 were Islamist stuff. So that goes to show you that 18 could have been attacks that have been foiled as a result of that information that we've got. We've also had a large increase in the number of referrals to prevent, so about a 20% increase there. And what's interesting about those individuals that have been referred is that we've seen a 14% drop or fall in the stuff that relates to Islamist referrals or worries or concerns, but a 36% increase in that relates to the extreme right wing. And I think that, in the current context, is a real concern for us and certainly part of the challenge going forward this year. Obviously, David Anderson's review led to Contest 18 being published last year. We talked about institutions, individuals and ideologies as being the 3 main areas of focus for Prevent, but I think going forward we've got to acknowledge that certainly the extreme right wing will be one for the forthcoming 12 months. I think the second one will be about rehabilitation. That's not just the fact that we've got a lot of people serving terrorism offence sentences in prisons that are going to be released, but also we've got our returnees from places like Syria. So these individuals are coming back into our communities, and it's really important that we accept, we support, we re-engage those people as part of that rehabilitative process. And then the last element, the third key driver for us for the forthcoming 12 months really has to be to try and re-embed prevent as part of the safeguarding agenda. Because whether you refer to the 7 strands of safeguarding or 13 strands of safeguarding, prevention certainly being one of them that sits side by side with the work that goes on in communities in relation to things like CSE, domestic abuse, etc., etc. We will have, the 1st of April, the Counter-Terrorism and Border Security Act goes on the statute books. It's just been passed back from Royal Assent. I think an amendment's been submitted, and as a result of that, Ben Wallace, the Security Minister, has announced that there will be a full review of Prevent specifically. And we welcome that because we want now to have more conversations with local communities about Prevent.
Yeah.
Lots of concerns in the past about it being a spying exercise or it being overly focused on Muslim communities. Having come from local policing, I completely understand that, and I'm really keen that we start having those in-depth conversations now to show that that's not the case, and that we make sure that Prevent really does serve our local communities fairly. So early intervention and sharing of information should come from that piece of legislation. Also, greater powers to tackle the online space, because clearly there's an increased threat there, and that's a societal change and challenge for us. And then desistance and disengagement programmes, which again feeds into the rehabilitation agenda that I mentioned. So that's kind of the national context. But from a West Yorkshire Police point of view, first and foremost, I'm fairly new to this post. I wanted to understand exactly where we are now. You commissioned an internal audit last year, so the Office of the Police and Crime Commission came into local counter-terrorism policing and did a root and branch review of the work that we're on with. As a result of that, what I've done is developed an action plan. Each of the 5 district commanders across West Yorkshire have nominated SLT, so Senior Leadership Team Representative. They've been convened as a silver group specifically for Prevent and specifically to put into action the things that you flagged up. It's a lengthy action plan with lots of learning in it for us, and we really do welcome that. But I think to summarise it, I would say that what we were required to do was to bring some clarity as to what's sat with local policing and what's sat with counter-terrorism policing, because there was a danger that some stuff would fall through the gaps and then other things were being duplicated. So that was led to a memorandum of understanding between counter-terrorism policing and local policing in West Yorkshire, and that is captured within that action plan. At the back end of last year, then following that, we were in good shape for when the HMIC FRS landed to do an inspection of West Yorkshire in October and November. And the feedback from that, the official feedback, will be a thematic report that will be published in June. That will be a national report, but we did get a hot debrief, and the feedback for West Yorkshire was very, very good. I'm pleased to say. So good feedback, particularly in relation to partnerships, but some of the areas for improvement echoed really the sentiments of the OPCC internal audit about inconsistency, particularly around things like training. So that's a piece of work that we've picked up. So heading forwards then, as we develop our business plan for the forthcoming 12 months, we've got the Prevent Policy and Practitioners Guide, which has been published. Also feedback from the Home Affairs Select Committee in relation to Parsons Green and the way that that young man was handled through channels, lots of learning in that for us. And also the Home Office has published a local authority toolkit, which gives a benchmarking tool so that each of the 5 local authorities within West Yorkshire are using that to make sure that from a partnership perspective, linking in with police, we've really got that synergy that we can get from working closely together. Our business plan for the forthcoming 12 months will follow 3 main strands. It's about identifying individuals that are at risk in the first instance, and then safeguarding those individuals, or if it's not possible to safeguard them, is managing the risk of those individuals. And there'll be 6 elements to our strategy going forwards. The first one will be building public confidence, because unless we've got the confidence and the trust of the public, they won't turn to us and refer people to us that they're concerned about. And we need to get people to understand that Prevent within West Yorkshire is a diversion tool. It's to prevent people coming into the criminal space and the police space, and that we're working in partnership to prevent that happening and to prevent people being criminalised. The second element will be around engagement, so we're already linking in with 5 districts across West Yorkshire about their current existing independent advisory groups. We're visiting each one of those. Again, really interested in meaningful conversations with members of the community that attend those, and we're also thinking of setting up a counter-terrorism specific IAG for for West Yorkshire stroke the North East to build on a similar structure that sits at a national level. The third one is in relation to training. This is something that's really, really important. There are two elements here, or two key parts to that. One is that we're developing a menu of training opportunities. It's not just conventional stuff, it's the e-learning and stuff that you can do online, and it's not just for police officers, it's for partners as well. And then we're embedding that unit using Prevent Champions, who are representatives, single points of contact, if you like, from each of the respective teams within policing within West Yorkshire, who volunteer to be sort of go-to people as training, awareness and a communication network for us really. In relation to what drives business, the counter-terrorism local profile is the intelligence product. We're digging deeper and getting a richer picture than we've ever got, because we've now developed a non-detective and marked version, so we can actually speak to tenants and residents groups in West Yorkshire. We can actually have PCSOs speak to community meetings to really get and elicit that real ground level community intelligence to make sure that we've got a CTLP that's meaningful and does what it says on the tin in terms of being local and driving that local business against radicalisation and extremism. Processes, as I say, we've got the new policy, so that's something that we can build upon. And the last element of the strategy with the governance for the forthcoming 12 months, and Mr Ridley, Assistant Chief Constable, chairs the gold level strategic board for West Yorkshire to make sure that, again, it's not just the police, but we're joined up across the board with partners. The OSCT, Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism, are just in the final throes of deciding the funding for the local authority areas for the forthcoming 12 months. It's a cross-governmental exercise where we sort of triangulate a lot of quantitative data from local communities in West Yorkshire with a qualitative report from my analysts, and then we have a round table discussion. The good news from that is that all of the funded local authorities in West Yorkshire will retain that funded status, and some of the projects that they've submitted were the subject of a conversation at a moderation meeting in London on Monday, and whilst I can't give official results in relation to that, they were handing over some of the projects that you the LPCC yourself have funded in our local communities. I'm really positive and optimistic that going forward, a lot of the projects that they've proposed will be funded by the OSCT. Just to sort of summarise the partnership work at the end, mental health is something that's an issue within Prevent. Certainly a number of people refer to as it's evident that is the most important element of addressing those individuals' particular needs. So we've now got 3 trained mental health nurses funded by National Policing Headquarters in London to work across the North East to make sure that we're triaging and actually getting the best out of mental health services that already exist. If that makes sense. Work with higher education and further education continues, some interesting collaboration there with various academics doing some research to try and get really down to the root causes of radicalisation to assist us, and of course work with education generally continues. Another element of work is the work that we're doing with the Ministry of Defence. They don't have a prevent duty as such, but they've undertaken to do take accepted duty to the same level, if you like, voluntarily, and they're working closely so that they can tackle some of the concerns, particularly extreme right-wing stuff that they've been worried about within the Ministry of Defence. I think in summary that covers our position today.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. That's comprehensive, a lot of work going on there, and quite rightly, there's a real focus on all forms of extremism, but obviously this worry around the growing threat around far-right extremism. And of course, unfortunately, we have seen some of our local, well, we all know about the incidents around Joe Cox in 2017, as you said, but sadly there seems to be an uplift in sort of targeting of MPs generally, but absolutely some in our parts of West Yorkshire, which I had some involvement with last weekend in conversation with John Robbins, Temporary Chief, and and the MP involved. So it is something that, as you're probably aware, there is real concern around intelligence and doing whatever we can to put measures in place to try and reassure our MPs and any elected representatives or people in public positions generally. Obviously, in terms of some of the questions, welcome the developments around the sort of district structures that you mentioned. And it's really just explaining how you are linking in with the safeguarding units as a result of that district work. And I know you touched on some of the champion type roles, but just to be clear, they're in addition to the district coordinators that are in place from a local authority perspective.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the one of the challenges is for us, as I say, sort of embed or get, I suppose, the ground back that Prevent had within safeguarding, because it's sort of slipped away for a while. So what we've done there is to work closely with the West Yorkshire Safeguarding Central Governance Unit. So the DCI from that particular department and the DCI from Council from Policing have got together to develop a joint action plan. So the detective inspectors, for example, from the two disciplines, the two areas, are now having a regular meeting and working together. And an example of something that we're developing is that we're going to try and piggyback some of the stuff that's already going on a local level. So I think engagement with local communities is about earning trust. And once that bridge of trust is built between local policing and the PCSOs and the UNPT model, it's the thing that will deliver this. But once that bridge is built between them and the local communities, then the traffic that moves over that, it can be about CSE, it can be domestic abuse as well as Prevent. So from a safeguarding perspective, we're saying, right, well, let's put some training days on there where the mornings will be about engagement generally, and then the afternoon will be sessions about CSE, domestic abuse, Prevent. And so that's one example of how we'll work together. And as I said, the two DCIs are on with developing a whole action plan with lots of impressive stuff in relation to that. The other thing we're doing to sort of bring the two together is to work more closely with local authorities, so whether there are MASH arrangements, wholesale, where in Kirklees, for example, there's a closer relationship around the whole management of channel from the local authority. That's an opportunity for us to be able to create links between the general safeguarding agenda and some of the resources wrapped around that. And Prevent. And then similarly, there are a number, Leeds is a good example of meetings where they will have a forum, and it's very much about what are the signs that we look out for and how do we report things in, which might have started in relation to CSE but now covers the other strands as well, so that we're getting ourselves into those, and our Prevent officers are proactively seeking out those opportunities to work more closely together. So that's that in relation to that. In relation to the Prevent champions, as I said, that's very much an awareness training and communication network. So that has expanded from not just within uniformed policing departments, but other policing departments within West Yorkshire Police. Willing volunteers and a strong coordinator at kind of inspector level have been the key ingredients to that. And then what we've done is we've gathered those people together to train them to be specialists, and then they go back to their respective departments. When they get an opportunity to brief and train colleagues, they do, or it might just be to cascade or disseminate information. But we law, I mean, Bradford ran it as a pilot. They've got almost 100 champions within Bradford district. The other districts are now following suit, and to kick that off on the 4th of Feb, we launched at Havertop, or at Cargate, excuse me, through a conference. We invited some 130 colleagues from across West Yorkshire, so that we're rolling that out across the board. Indeed, we also invited people from across the region to that, and other forces are now going to mirror that and follow suit. But one thing we've already started in Colwell within West Yorkshire, for example, we will definitely do is to actually have those champions within partner agencies as well, so it's not just police departments.
Yeah, and you sort of answered a follow-on question there. So, the ambition is that it isn't just about policing staff and personnel; it's partners
across
as well.
Yeah. And partners are very receptive to that, and they're coming involved and volunteering. So I think it'll be a success.
Okay. James, anything on that? Okay. So, it's really, the next question is around raising awareness of those strengthening relationships between the North East Counter-Terrorism Unit and the districts, and just providing more information on that training that will be delivered to some of the new recruits, for example. But I think just for anybody that will tune into this, the North East Counter-Terrorism Unit clearly covers not just West Yorkshire, but the whole of the Yorkshire and Humber region and the North East as well. And again, to be clear, that the budget for this, whilst yes it does come through my budget and West Yorkshire Police's budget, is obviously ring-fenced to cover the dedicated officers and staff within the unit. And I guess just a little bit of your perspective on the sort of uplift that we've seen around that, and if that is feeding through in terms of the overall resources that you have to carry out some of this work as well.
Yeah, from our perspective, the uplift that we've seen has enabled us to get above critical mass really in relation to the numbers of prevent officers that we've got within the connections with local policing, so in particular the ones that link to the 5 districts within West Yorkshire, because as you say, we've got 7 forces across the North East. So that uplift has enabled us to have better relationships, better working relationships, and do more meaningful work. But I think the general uplift, and as you were saying earlier, with nearly 12 months since the growth of neighbourhood policing generally, to enable neighbourhood policing officers to get away from necessarily just call handling and doing the 999 stuff, which is an emergency service we had to do through austerity, to start forging those links into communities and being able to do that engagement stuff. So we're seeing a double whammy really in terms of benefit, both the uplift within counter-terrorism policing, but also how that now can link into the uplift within neighbourhood policing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's good to hear, because having, and I've said this in other forums, but whilst when we've seen the awful events at Manchester and in London around the sort of counter-terrorist attacks, it obviously then creates a lot of attention and focus on that agenda. But in my view, it's always been a folly not to sort of denude the sort of neighbourhood footprint and move, just to a sort of CT response, because without officers, PCSOs, etc. on the ground in those communities, then the whole thing doesn't add up, and we're missing a trick. So you think that's now starting to come back?
The key the forthcoming 12 months really is to have those conversations between counter-terrorism policing about prevent specifically in communities, but that conversation needs to be brokered through an agent of trust, and that's got to be your local policing PCSO, MPT inspector, or whatever it might be, to be in that room to broker that conversation between community and counter-terrorism policing, and that's the plan.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to add to the Commissioner's point there, so you talked about the good work in Bradford and the planned visit from ACSO Basoo on the 8th. Did that happen, and how did that go?
It did indeed, it went very well, and the MPT inspector over at Bradford, who is the coordinator for the 100 Bradford champions, attended and had a one-to-one with Neil Basoo, who was delighted with the work that has been done, and he wants to take that nationally and share it as best practice. So yeah, the links to Bradford has been heralded as the leading light really in relation to this key area of work.
Okay, and again, just to be clear, Neil Basoo is the counter-terrorism lead nationally, but he's based in the metropolitan police. In fact, I will be attending, maybe with you, and I know Stuart Piper, the safeguarding advisor, a counter-terrorism oversight board, a week on Friday, I think it is. So, obviously outside of this meeting, it'd be good for us to understand what are the key points perhaps want to raise at that national meeting. And again, I come back to, unfortunately, because of some of the activity we have seen recently around the far right and threats to MPs, that is clearly an area that is of concern in terms of, whatever the drivers are behind that, and I think we can all guess what one of those will be. But, I've always said that wherever this extremism comes from, it has to be dealt with consistently and not tolerated, wherever it comes from. And I know that's easier said than done, particularly when you look at social media and the platforms and all the debate that's raging there. But I guess it's just seeking a little bit more reassurance around the work and intelligence and the sort of plans around that sort of right-wing extremism, given that the North East unit does actually lead on that area of work.
Mm. And the North East has seen a greater increase in referrals, intelligence and associated bits of information in relation to the far right as well, so it's something that we intend to tackle head on. As you say, we're focusing on it, we've got specific resources allocated to it, and that's already paying dividends in terms of some of the analysis. And again, linking into local policing is speaking to local communities to get the information to be able to enable us to take an intelligence-led approach to tackling those particular issues, really. But working with sport, football, there are all sorts of people that are on board now and are likely, as you say, there are obvious key drivers for this divisive sort of issue within society. And people are alive to it, and so people are very receptive to assisting us with it and working in partnership with us on that agenda.
And in relation to some of the social media providers and platforms, is that part of the work as well?
There are, it is indeed. There are some specific social media platforms that have been used by the extreme right-wing and far right, and we have got communications ongoing with those individuals. And again, in terms of part of that investment, to have that prevent cyber officer role embedded as a new role within the local team within councils and police is something that we've adopted, something that will pay dividends fairly quickly.
Okay, good, Al, and that's something I'll take it with you outside of this arena. But Jane, any more questions from you? Thank you very much for that report and update. Thank you.